Hello, and welcome back to the show. I'm Yvonne Gamble, your host for the CSW 66. This is our parallel event that Women Leading Change Now actually puts on and hosts every year. So, this is the 66th convening for the status of women for the United Nations, and we offer this platform for women to provide a voice on the status of where they are in the world, what is happening in their industries, and they give us all sorts of great insight. And we take that information back and hopefully be able to put it into something that's implementable and actionable. So again, I'm Yvonne Gamble, and I'm the co-founder of Women Leading Change Now, and then I'm also the CEO of Sanpete Financial Group. Now today I have a treat for you. I have a Dr. Robyn Odegaard, and she's going to talk to us about creating success out of chaos. And as we all know, out of chaos comes everything. So there's no telling where this conversation is going to go. She's a great conversationalist, and we have a wonderful time. So I'm looking forward to that, and I want you to help me welcome her to the show.
Thanks so much, Yvonne. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Dr. Robyn. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, just so that we can have a conversation. We know that, we're right in the throes of climate change, and that's chaos. There's a lot of chaos going on. So it's got everybody scrambling. Everybody's scrambling. Every industry is trying to figure out, how do I fit in? How do I make money? How do I brand myself? How, what? And we just kind of fumbling all over ourselves. So what do we do?
Well, I think an interesting way to look at it when I first start talking to clients is, do you want to live your default life, which it'll get you from cradle to grave just fine. But if you want to live a more created life, a more fulfilled life, that space between your default life and your created life, it's where the chaos happens. You've got your dreams and your expectations and your failures and your relationships, and you throw in a pandemic and some global warming and you've got chaos. So if you want to try and live that most created life, what does that look like? How do you do that? And the first thing I always say is, you have to figure out, what is my vision? Which you can call it vision, you can call it goals, you can call it created, fulfilled, whatever you want. But for so many of us, there's so much chaos, we don't know where we're going first off.
So, in that, and I hear that a lot, and, especially for women, I really don't know what I want to do. And a lot of times it seems to stem from the start and stop. Well, that's what it looks like. That's the obvious thing that you look at, that you can see and define. You start out, in your career, you're going to take the world by storm. You're going to college, then you get married. Then you stop that career and you have children, you raise a family. And somewhere in there, it doesn't actually, happen on that nice little straight line. There's starts and stops. You want to go into business. You want to be more creative. You want to get back to the way you were in college days, or before college, or right after college, before you were married. All these types of things come in. So, fine, you have a dream. You have goals, or you had a dream, or you had goals. Now what can I do? How can I just kind of stop the merry-go-round and get off?
So the first thing, the question I love to ask, put everything else on pause and just answer this one question. What does your most fulfilled life look like? And that is one of the most challenging questions I've found. I call it a powerful question to answer, because, I can just pause everything and say, what does it look like ideally? That is an amazing thing to be able to take the time to do. And once you have that, once you know, and it doesn't have to be permanent. What does your most fulfilled life look like today? In 6 months, it might change. But once you have that, then you can start saying, okay, so what kind of strategy, or what kind of steps, or what kind of small incremental goals would go into making that a reality? And then you get to ask yourself this question. This is another good one. Are the things I'm doing today helping or hurting that most fulfilled life?
That's extremely powerful. And when you ask that question, I'm pretty sure you've asked this question thousands of times of your clients. Is it fear that comes into their eyes and into their body movements and body language, where they're almost afraid to say they know what they want, but they're almost afraid that if I say it, then that means I'm going to have to make a commitment to do it?
One of the things that I always tell my clients when I start any conversation is you can't be too anything. You can't be too broken. You can't dream too big. You can't want too much. And once I give someone permission that they can't be too, then they're more likely to say, you know, what I really want is, and whatever it is. Now, that's not to say, because the third step on creating success out of chaos, that's not to say they don't have psychological barriers. Because we all do. We all have things that keep us from achieving whatever our most fulfilled life is. It might be we have saboteurs, those internal voices that say things to us like, who do you think you are? Or, oh, you shouldn't do that. That's not safe. Or what if that succeeds and people know you and then people are going to come after you? And, you know, whatever your saboteurs say. Some of us upper limit ourselves. We have this inbuilt from childhood that says, oh, you can only be this good. If you're better than that, then that's not okay. What's keeping you? Maybe you don't have the accountability you need. So yes, when I start asking these questions, do those psychological barriers come up? Every time.
Okay. And so how then do we get, and those are our internal gatekeepers. Mm-hmm. How do we navigate or get through them or get past them? Or, because I know fear is that one thing that's, you know, those false expectations appearing real. Mm-hmm. And if you face it, it's usually just your imagination. It really, you know, has nothing to do with the true reality. It's just what you're imagining someone is going to say. And because I'm pretty sure many people have come and said to you, I've experienced this myself, where they've said they didn't say anything. And you thought, and I thought in my mind, it was fixated in my mind, they were going to, you know, react, you know, differently. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm very shocked. You know, say anything to them, but I'm very shocked that they didn't, you know, come in a negative manner in which I thought they would.
So here's the interesting thing that a lot of us don't realize about our brains. Your brain has the emotional side of your brain, and that part of your brain is where your fight or flight happens, and it gets into this whole spiral thing, and it's like, oh my goodness, all this stuff. But your logical brain has only access to language. So if your emotional brain never has to actually articulate that stuff, all your logical brain knows is, am I scared or am I angry? Just tell me which I'm doing. Because it really has no idea. And what I find with my clients is when I start getting them to articulate it, tell me what's going on. What are you afraid of? I have this thing I get clients to do called catastrophication. How bad could it really be? And once they start really talking about it and it comes out of their mouth, and this has probably happened to you, I know this happens to my clients a lot, they say, wow, that doesn't sound nearly as scary when I say it. Yeah, because now your logical brain has access to it and can say, wait, that's what we've been worrying about?
Okay. So now let's take a little bit of a turn here. And I want to look at, you know, just some realities that are out here.
Okay.
And that is the, you know, realities. Ozone layer, you know, is has thinned. It's not thinning, not going too thin, it's thinned. We're getting climate change is, you know, it's right here. We're looking at it, you know, every day. Raining where it normally doesn't rain, you know, snowing where it normally doesn't snow, hot where it's generally cold. We're seeing, you know, volcanoes, you know, erupting, tsunamis, you know, being just the result of a volcano erupting, you know, some 6,000 miles away. These are the realities. How do we press forward with our dreams and our aspirations with these sorts of things? Do we change our dreams? What can we do?
Well, I definitely feel like in my business, what I've seen change is that I'm no longer flying all over the planet. And it's good for my business. It's also good for the climate. So now I can take a meeting with a client in Europe in the morning. I can be in the boardroom with another client in Canada at noon. And then I can go and do a team building in California in the afternoon. And I don't have to leave this space, which means no flying, which has been, for me, I'm plant-based. I do a lot of things for the climate, but the pandemic really made my clients aware that I don't have to be there in person. And that's been a huge thing for me. And I think all of us could be more willing, aware. I don't know exactly which word I want to use right there, but to be able to say, can I do this via video? And is it the same as being able to hug your grandchild? No, it's not. But it is, I can still observe a CEO doing a presentation and give him or her feedback via video.
I think, I had the very first business that I had. I was on 8 South Michigan Avenue, 22nd floor, right on Willoughby Towers, right across from the Art Institute. It was beautiful to look out over Lake Michigan. My business that I had, I did something at that time was cutting edge, where I used videotape. I had this, and that's when the video cameras were huge. So I had this huge, you almost had like a motion picture camera they were that size. And I used the videotape to tape the clients because these were clients who were being downsized, right size, capsized, that sort of thing. So they were coming out from vice presidents, senior VPs, CEOs, CFOs, and now they were having to, their industries were being bought out, their companies were being, or their departments were being, bought out or merged into, whatever the merger and acquisition came on. And putting them in front of that camera made a lot of difference in what they thought they said or what they thought they looked like on camera or how they thought that they conveyed their messaging. That's what it was really all about. It was so that you could see and hear yourself, because I could make all the assessments in the world of them, but that was not as, so I would literally sit in the chair, have the camera shooting over my shoulder. It's just looking at them and I'm talking and asking questions and we're going through everything. And I can tell you just some of the startling revelations that came out of that for people. And when I look back, that was in the early 80s. When I look now at what we're doing, it's literally, I'm seeing the same thing. It's those same startling revelations that are coming out where people are realizing what they're doing, what they have to do, how they look, how they sound, the messages that the messaging, that they're actually bringing forth, and and who they're actually presenting out there. I think that's going to be a big play just in the world that we actually end up living in, where we become, what's happening. The chaos that is right now, it's like we are truly in the eye of the storm. And from my perspective, that's where we are, because all these things are happening around us, and we can see it, and now we've got to pivot. And then once we've been asked to pivot in one direction, we got to pivot another direction. Now we got to pivot up. Now we got to pivot down. So it's like the dance of the pivot now. But can
I interrupt you just real quick?
Yeah.
One of the most powerful things that I do for my clients when they're trying, because a lot of them are on video now and they're watching themselves and seeing themselves. One of the most powerful things that you can do to help yourself on video is have what you say transcribed. There will be nothing that will help you pick up your ums and ers and filler words faster than reading what you're actually saying. I do that for my clients pretty consistently, and it makes a huge difference.
Okay, you're absolutely right. Yes, that is. You're absolutely right with that. So I know that you have written several books.
I have.
On these different issues. So I'd like for the audience just to get a glimpse. This lady is very powerful. I know she's sitting there. She seems so quiet and so meek, but you just don't know. This Dr. Robyn is a powerhouse, and she's only giving you a touch, not even a touch or taste of her powerful questions, because she asks questions. It's like, I don't
Oh,
know if I want to answer
I
that
have I
question.
have pages of questions that they
And
sit right here, and I'm like, what question should I ask next?
right, each one is more look like it packs a punch. The first you think, okay, got through that. That's okay. I'm good now.
Careful!
This,
Don't scare them! Don't scare them! We have to make make a difference here. But yeah, we'll talk a minute about the book. Sure. So the first book I wrote is called Stop the Drama: The Ultimate Guide to Female Teams. And that book was based on my dissertation. It's about team conflict and why female athletes tend to engage in backstabbing. And it's for female teams, their coaches, and their parents. And I do a lot of speaking and training with athletes around that, because it is focused on athletes. The stories are for athletes. The second one, similar concept, is called The Ultimate Guide to Handling Every Disagreement Every Time. And that's got a fun picture on the bottom of it there. My husband did that graphic, so I'm very proud of it. And that has more corporate conversations in it about how to handle disagreements. And the reason that I can confidently say every disagreement every time is because the one thing you always get to control is yourself. And that's kind of what this book is about, is how do you manage yourself in a disagreement in a way that can have a productive outcome.
oh, okay.
And then the last one is a different concept entirely. It is called, oops, put my head over here. Here we go. How to Feed a Human the Whole Food Muscle Way. And that's about my husband and I's journey to becoming plant-based, which not only has been good for our health, but is also good for the environment and good for climate change and all of that. And it has, recipes I came up with, and just basically our journey to being plant-based. I felt like it was really important for the environment and for our health that we make that change.
Okay, we'll take them in the reverse order.
All
In
right.
the how
to feed a human.
How to feed a human. Okay. Now, tell us this.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between we were vegetarians, then we wanted to become vegans, and now we're plant-based?
Yes.
What is the difference in the three?
Okay, sure. So vegetarian typically means no flesh, no animal flesh, but they still eat milk or eggs and those kind of things. So things that come from animals but don't kill them are okay if you're vegetarian. If you're vegan is an ethos. And that means that nothing that comes from animals, whether it's leather in your car, a leather belt, you don't eat meat, you don't eat animal, they call them secretions, love milk, eggs, anything like that. You also try to not use like shampoos or makeups that have any animal base or testing on animals. So it's a very strong ethos to be vegan. Plant-based typically means, and there's another term out there, whole food plant-based.
Right.
Plant-based means that you don't eat animal products, which means animal flesh, animal products such as eggs or milk. But you may not have the ethos. So, you might have a leather belt or a leather jacket, or you might have, so that's the difference. And if you're whole food plant-based, that means that things that are processed, like the Impossible Burger or those kind of things, that you avoid those for health reasons as well.
Oh, okay. Okay, so whole foods. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So really so somebody who says that I'm a whole food consumer, mm-hmm. I'm not eating any processed foods either.
Or at least minimal processed. And that includes oils, because oils are very, very heavily processed foods.
Right.
So you would avoid, and we tend to lean pretty heavily toward being whole food plant-based. And that is the journey that we went on through the process. I didn't mean to go there. I just followed the science and found myself there.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, tell me this, what then do you substitute for oil? Because you're not doing butter.
No.
And then you're not doing oil.
No. So I don't cook with oils at all. I tend to just use the juices. So for example, if I want to cook down onions, I'll put them in my skillet. I have a really nice cast iron skillet, put them in there, put the lid on them. And the thing about cooking that way, so as Americans, we tend to be super impatient, and you can cook really high heat if you have oil. You turn the heat up, the oil keeps it from sticking, you're good. If you don't use oil, you have to turn the heat down. You have to be a little more patient. But the onions will cook down into a beautiful, crispiness, and they're just yummy that way. And so I just take your time, turn the heat down, and it'll be fine.
Okay. So it sounds like, this style of eating is not just simply good for your health, it's good for the environment. And it's also good for the household, because you're keeping, like you say, you take your time and you're spending, your time is a little bit more on purpose on what you're doing. And you're not just running in, cooking a meal, popping it in the microwave and running out. And then 3 hours later, you're starving to death. Okay.
And there is a little bit of a learning curve to it. I will say it took us 8 months to transition and kind of get over the learning curve of, because especially here in the States, we're very much like, well, what are you eating? And you start with your animal protein, whatever the meat is that you're eating. That's what I'm having chicken. Okay, what am I going to do with it? Well, if I suddenly take away and say, hey, you're not eating any more animal flesh, then you're like, well, I don't know what to eat. So there's a learning curve of how do you cook if you don't have that foundation, because we've all been taught that that's kind of how you eat.
Yeah. Okay.
I lost 20 pounds just like magic when I switched, not just by accident.
Basically the body is not harboring the fat from the food substances
and the toxins and the inflammation and
yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. That makes absolute sense. So now let's take the second book that we looked at,
The Ultimate Guide to Handling Every Disagreement Every Time.
Every time. So basically you say you're handling every disagreement every time. You seem to have focused on that every time. Or maybe my mind's eye focused on it every time.
So it's a matter of, in the book, I talk about communication fingerprints. And the way that we use language is as individual to us as our fingerprint is. And it depends upon where you grew up and who raised you and where you went to school and who your friends were. It's interesting because I have a lot of friends and clients in the UK, and they have words that I know what all the words mean individually, but I don't know what they mean together. So for example, they have a phrase, they say, don't throw your toys out of the pram. Now, I know what those words mean, but what do they mean together? What they mean together is what we would say, don't throw a hissy fit.
Okay.
Don't throw your toys out of the pram. And so when you speak English, especially I do this on teams, when I do team development work, when everyone speaks English, we assume that the words that I'm using, they're English words, they mean the same thing to you that they mean to me. That's not the case. And so when I go through this process of team development, is I have everyone kind of, what is your communication fingerprint? What happens to you when you become angry or agitated? And if you can learn to recognize that, especially your psychosomatic response, which is that fight or flight response that happens when you become frustrated. So for example, you get an email, you start reading it, you realize this person is canceling on you or attacking you or whatever they are. What happens and how do you catch it? That's the first step to handling every disagreement every time, is catching your psychosomatic response to your blood flooding.
Okay. So basically what you're saying to people is, what are your trigger points?
Yep. Notice
your trigger point. Know your trigger points and stay below your trigger points, or calm yourself down until you are you're rationally able to actually deal with something or talk with someone or resolve that. And
back to that emotional brain, right? If your emotional brain takes off with you, your logical brain doesn't have a chance to catch up. So you have to find a way to time out, hold on. All right, now I'm calm. Let me have this conversation in a reasonable fashion.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes absolute sense. Yes, it does, because anything unresolved problems are the worst problems.
Absolutely. And if you and I interact regularly and I know what your trigger points are, then I can purposefully stay away from them so that we can have a reasonable conversation. Now, there is the risk, and I'm sure you have people like this in your life. They learn your trigger points and they push them on purpose.
Yes.
That's a separate problem.
That's a separate problem. Yes, exactly. Exactly. I get that. I get that. And I think we all get that. But it's like you say, you can control yourself. So even when you're triggered, you don't be triggered. Don't allow that.
Well, catch it. At least catch it.
Yeah, catch it, and come back to it at a later point.
Exactly.
Okay. And now, book number 1.
Yes, Stop the Drama: The Ultimate Guide to Female Teams. And again, this one is for athletes. It's focused on athletes. Although I do have business people who read it. It is focused on female athletes because my dissertation when I got my doctoral degree was a team development program for a D1 swim team. And the coach said to me, "Robyn, just make the drama stop." And so that's where the title from the book came from.
Well, you know what, Dr. Robyn, I'm going to say this. That you showed there, you're going to have to do one for women. You're going to have to. Not you should. Not it'd be a great idea. No, you are going to have to. Because it doesn't stop at the team, at the athletic. We might stop the argument, stop the fight, what have you, calm them down, and they go on, to do their sport. But then they become those women that come into the office. They become those women that sabotage themselves, sabotage others. They become that.
And men engage in drama if they are in a place where they cannot get into fistfights. They also will dissolve into engaging in backstabbing and catty behavior and gossiping and all of the nonsense that we usually associate with women. Men do it if they can't get into a power struggle with someone.
Now that's interesting. Okay, I learned something here today. Now, okay. Now I see how that behavior comes. Because, I've looked, I grew up in a male-dominated, home where it was more men than women. And so it was, it's a little bit different. I guess we took on more of the male roles and what have you in way of solving, different problems and conflict. It's a more straight line. It is or it isn't, more or less.
Men do, I call it king of the jungle. Men do a very much, I'm in charge, and they will fall in line behind the person in charge until they think they have the power to overtake them.
Right, exactly. So we were, it was forever the vying for the power. So I get that. But and so when I coming out of that environment and then seeing other men now who like you just said, they become very catty and gossipy, and it's like, well, that's not man-like, in my mind.
And it's because it's safer to do if they can't get into the power struggle.
Okay. Wow. The world of behavior, and you figure, and then there's a tornado raging outside. My goodness! What are we to do? What are we to do?
Well, calm ourselves and think logically would be the first thing. But then sometimes it's hard to do. And I will say to clients, don't confuse the situation with the facts if your emotions are running off with you, because facts don't change emotions. You have to go back to that. What is my most fulfilled? What do I need to have happen? And deal with the emotion, or it'll just brew underneath. You'll never get it sorted with logic.
Oh, okay. So you're saying deal with the emotion. Okay, you're gonna have to bring that one again. This time, take it a little bit slower.
So here's the way. Have you ever had a situation? And I know this happens to me, but it's probably because of the role that I'm in. I'll ask someone, "How do you feel about that? What do you need out of that?" And they come back to you with logic, and I'm like, "No, I need a feeling word." And my books have feeling words in the back of them, because a lot of times people only kind of have a couple of feelings. They're either happy, they're sad, or they're angry. And there's not any nuance to it. But that's not true for humans. You can be frustrated, and that's very different from being angry. You can feel betrayed. That's very different from being sad. And so if I can help someone find the word that help, because again, back to that emotional brain, your emotional brain has feelings, but if your logical brain doesn't have a word to attach to it, your logical brain's lost. So what you have to do is deal with the underlying emotion before you start throwing logic on it, because I'm sure you've had times where all the logic lines up and you're like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now that's what I'm pretty sure the audience is. They're basically saying,
Yep.
"Aha! I get you now. I get
Yep.
that. Yeah,
Yep.
that just doesn't feel right because you have not attached a feeling to it. You're just hoping that you will let logic dictate."
Right. And
For
you
lack
hear
of
it
a better term.
in sales, you hear it in everything, where if you come at it with logic and it doesn't feel right, it's not going to work. And in the kind of work I do, I had a client recently call me a smoke jumper, that I kind of parachute into your life and sort it all out. And what I do is kind of help that underlying turmoil that is the emotion that is creating the chaos, because just adding logic doesn't fix it.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to take that into, into the climate change, into the boardroom, into the home room, and all throughout. And I will say to women out there, this is something that you need to really be cognizant of. As you go through your days, as you go through your life, and as you make all these changes. Amidst what we're doing, we're still coming out of the pandemic. We're now, and climate change is upon us, and we're having to change. And one of the things that is true, and that is change. All things most likely to. So let's not get ourselves too dug in and too steeped in simply where we are, but learning how to be agile in how we do things. Dr. Robyn, I'm going to let you have the last word here, and then we'll close it out with Dr. Robyn's last word on what she wants to offer, what she wants to say to the audience.
So the last thing I want to offer you is that, first of all, look at the people, places, things around you, habits that you're engaging in that are either helping or hurting you. That is where you're going to start to find the things that you need to change. And the last thing is that I do have a podcast called Quick Hits. If you would love to be on it, I would encourage you to reach out to me and let's have a 10-minute conversation. One topic, 4 people, 10 minutes. They're great fun. Come join us.